the man who just wanted a piece of bread. Morning light poured through the wide glass windows of the small bakery on the corner of Maple Street. It was the kind of place where the warm smell of fresh bread could soften even the hardest heart. The bell above the door sang a soft jingle every time someone stepped inside, bringing in a bit of the busy city outside. On that day, Keanu Reeves stood alone in the bakery line. He wore his old black coat and jeans that looked worn at the knees. His hair was a little messy from the wind, but his eyes were calm, tired, but gentle. He had been up all night filming on the other side of town, and now all he wanted was something simple, a piece of warm bread, maybe a cup of tea. He had chosen this bakery for a reason. It was small, hidden between bigger stores, and most people who came here were neighbors, not tourists with camera phones. Here, he could be just a man buying bread, not a famous face people whispered about. But today, something was different. There was a tension in the air, something sharp that scratched at the piece he thought he would find inside. Behind the counter stood a young cashier named Marcus. He was tall, strong, with skin the color of dark coffee and eyes that held storms. Behind them, Marcus had only started working here 2 weeks ago. No one knew much about him, but they noticed how he moved, quick, careful, always watching. When it was Keanu's turn to order, he stepped forward with a soft smile. He pointed at the fresh rye bread sitting behind the glass. "Just a piece of that, please," Keanu said, his voice quiet but warm. Marcus did not smile back. Instead, he crossed his arms and tilted his head. His eyes flicked to the small crowd behind Keanu, then back to Keanu's tired face. "You think you can just walk in here and get the best piece?" Marcus asked, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Keanu felt the air shift. A woman behind him gasped softly. A child tugged at his mother's coat. The bakery owner, Mrs. Hill, looked up from the oven in the back, worry etching deep lines in her forehead. Keanu blinked, surprised by the anger in Marcus's tone. "I'm sorry," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, respectful. "I can take another one if..." Marcus slammed his hand on the counter, making the glass case rattle. No, you don't get to do that. You come in here acting like you're better than everyone else because you're, what, famous. You think that matters here." Keanu's cheeks burned, not from shame for himself, but because he could feel the eyes on him. He hated moments like this, moments when people turned him into something he wasn't. He never wanted to stand above anyone. He had spent his whole life trying to stand beside people, not over them. "I don't think I'm better," Keanu said softly. "I just wanted some bread." Marcus laughed, but there was no joy in it. It was the kind of laugh that left scars. "Look at you, so humble, so soft-spoken. You think that makes you good. You think you're one of us. You're not." The bakery fell into a heavy silence. No one knew where to look. Mrs. Hill stepped forward, wiping flour from her hands. "Marcus, that's enough. He's a customer, just like anyone else." But Marcus ignored her. His eyes were locked on Keanu's, and deep inside those eyes, Keanu saw something he had seen before. Pain, old pain, not born from Keanu's presence, but from something bigger, older, deeper. "You know what I think," Marcus said, voice low now, a storm barely held back. "I think people like you come in here to feel better about yourselves. You buy bread from a small shop instead of some fancy place uptown. You smile at people, make us think you care, but you don't care. You eat your bread, get in your big car, and forget about us the moment you walk out that door." Keanu opened his mouth to answer, but he stopped himself. What could he say that wouldn't sound like an excuse? How could he explain the nights he spent on park benches when he had nowhere to go? How could he tell Marcus about the times he gave away his money, not because he wanted to look good, but because he didn't want to hold more than he needed? He knew words would not heal the wounds Marcus carried. So instead, Keanu lowered his eyes, nodded once, and stepped back. "You're right," he said softly. "I'm sorry." He turned to leave, but before he could reach the door, an old man stepped forward. His name was Geller, a retired teacher who came to the bakery every morning for the same loaf of sourdough. He put a gentle hand on Keanu's shoulder. "Son, Mr. Geller said," his voice shaking with age but strong with kindness. "You don't have to leave like this. You've done nothing wrong." Keanu looked at him, eyes glassy with something heavier than embarrassment. "It's okay," he said. "Sometimes people need to speak their hurt. Maybe I needed to hear it." He pushed open the door. The bell jingled behind him, but the warmth he had felt when he first stepped inside was gone. Outside, the cold air slapped his face. He pulled his coat tighter around him and walked down the street, each step heavier than the last dot inside the bakery. The silence cracked like thin ice. Mrs. Hill rounded the counter, her eyes hard on Marcus. "What was that?" she hissed. "Why would you speak to him like that?" Marcus stared at the bread he refused to sell. He opened his mouth, then shut it. Behind his anger, his hands trembled. "He doesn't get to pretend he's one of us." Marcus muttered, "He's not." Mrs. Hill shook her head. "Maybe you're the one pretending." "Did you even see how he looked at you? No anger, no pride. Just a man who wanted bread and gave you his respect." Marcus said nothing. The bread behind the glass looked so ordinary, just flour and water and time. But he felt like he had broken something bigger than a loaf out on Maple Street. Keanu walked without looking up. He thought about the way Marcus's eyes had burned. He wondered what pain lived behind them, what loss, what struggle. He knew he could let it go. He could forget it by the next morning, drown it in a movie script, bury it under fake lights and sets. But something inside him whispered, "No, not this time, not him." Keanu stopped at the end of the block. He turned to look back at the bakery, its windows glowing warm against the cold city. Inside, a man stood behind a counter full of bread, carrying pain bigger than any loaf he could ever sell. And Keanu knew this was not over. Tomorrow, he would come back, not for the bread, for the man, the bread left on the counter, and the truth hidden behind walls. That night, Keanu lay awake in his small apartment on the quiet side of the city. The streetlights outside painted pale lines across his ceiling, but his mind was not calm enough to follow them. Instead, he kept seeing Marcus's face, the sharp eyes, the shaking hands that had tried so hard to stay strong behind anger. Keanu thought about all the times he had been looked at like that. He remembered sitting on benches when he was young, pockets empty, strangers walking by like he was invisible. He knew that look, the one that says, "You're not one of us, you never will be." But he also knew there was always more behind it. He could feel it like a stone in his chest. In the early hours, when the city was still wrapped in sleep, Keanu made a decision. He would not let anger be the end of this. He would not be the man who turned his back and said, "That's not my problem." When the sun rose, he pulled on his old coat, found the warm hat he almost never wore, and stepped outside. The air bit at his cheeks, but he welcomed the cold. It kept him awake. It reminded him that pain could be a path to something better if you let it be. The bakery opened just after dawn. The small bell above the door sang its soft jingle, but there were no other customers yet. The shelves were half full, rows of fresh bread resting like promises waiting to be broken or kept. Marcus stood behind the counter, shoulders tense. He was alone this time. Mrs. Hill was still in the back, mixing dough with her strong old hands. When he looked up and saw Keanu standing there, his eyes narrowed. "You came back," Marcus said, voice flat, but not sharp like before. Keanu stepped forward, slow, careful, like someone walking into a room that might collapse with one wrong word. "I did," he said, "not for bread, for you." Marcus scoffed, but his fingers tapped on the counter, nervous, unsure. "Don't you have better things to do, movies to make, fancy parties?" Keanu shook his head. "Maybe, but none of that matters right now." For a moment, they just looked at each other, two men from different worlds, standing on the same cold floor, breathing the same warm scent of fresh bread. Keanu rested his hands on the counter. "Why did you do it?" he asked softly. "Yesterday." "Why did you want to hurt me?" Marcus turned away, pretending to fix a row of croissants that did not need fixing. "You wouldn't understand. Try me," Keanu said. His voice was so gentle that it pulled the truth out like water from a well. Marcus's shoulders sank. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they were red around the edges. "You come in here with your nice face, your kind words, Everyone loves you. You're the good guy. You're the hero in every story. But people like me, we're just here to serve you. And when we speak up, we're the angry ones, the rude ones, the bad ones." Keanu did not argue. He let the words hit him heavy and true. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a man who makes mistakes. Like anyone." Marcus laughed. "But there was no poison in it now. Only pain, mistakes. You get to make mistakes and people forgive you. They make movies about how good you are. Me? I make one mistake. I'm out on the street." He looked away, eyes fixed on the small clock above the bread shelf. "You want to know what you didn't see yesterday? You didn't see the letter in my pocket. Eviction notice. My mom's house. She can't keep up with rent. I've been working here every hour I can get, but it's not enough. Nothing's ever enough." Keanu's heart cracked open. He wanted to say he understood, but he knew better than to say words that might sound empty. Instead, he asked, "What do you need?" Marcus's eyes snapped back to him. What do you need?" Keanu repeated. "Tell me, don't think about pride or shame. Just tell me what you need." Marcus looked down at his hands, his fingers curled into fists, then relaxed again. I need my mom to have a place to sleep. I need to feel like I'm not failing her every day. I need to not feel like a piece of nothing every time someone famous walks in here and acts like they belong more than I do." Keanu nodded, his throat tight. "Okay," he said. "Then let's fix it." Marcus frowned. "Fix it? You can't fix this. You can't just write a check and make it go away." Keanu shook his head. "No checks, no pity. But maybe there's another way. Let me help you find it, together." The small bell above the door jingled. Mrs. Hill stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked at them, two men standing so close yet so far apart, trying to build a bridge out of broken words. "Everything all right here?" she asked gently. Marcus looked at her, then at Keanu, then back at the bread he had refused to sell the day before. "Yeah," he said softly. "Maybe. I don't know." Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small paper bag. He opened it and showed Marcus a sandwich, homemade, rough around the edges, but real. "I brought you breakfast," Keanu said. "If you'll share it with me." Double quotes. Marcus stared at the sandwich, his lips parting like he wanted to laugh again. But instead, he nodded. "Yeah, okay, I can do that." They sat at the small corner table, two men sharing one sandwich, pieces of truth falling between bites. Keanu listened more than he spoke. Marcus talked about his mother's tired hands, the bills that came faster than his paychecks, the nights he lay awake listening to the pipes rattle in their old apartment. Keanu told him about his own lonely nights, the friends he had buried too young, the cold mornings when he sat on benches with nowhere to go. He spoke about mistakes he had made, the big ones, the quiet ones no one ever wrote about. When they finished eating, the bakery filled with the gentle hum of early customers. Marcus stood, wiping crumbs from the table. His eyes were softer now, the storm calm for the first time in days. "You really mean it?" Marcus asked. "You really want to help?" Keanu stood too. He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, light but strong. "Yes, not because you owe me, not because I want to look good, because I believe people should stand together when it's hardest to stand alone." Marcus looked at him, and for the first time since they met, he smiled, small, tired, but real. Outside, the city moved like it always did. People walked by, cars honked, the world spun on. But inside that tiny bakery on Maple Street, two men had taken the first step towards something bigger than bread. Keanu knew it would not be easy. There would be days when Marcus would push him away again, nights when the fear and anger returned. But he also knew this. Sometimes the strongest connections grow from the places where we feel most broken. And he was ready to stand there, no matter how long it took. A piece of bread, a roof, and a promise. The next few days passed like a slow river. Cold mornings, warm bread, short words that slowly grew into real conversations. Every morning, Keanu came to the bakery, the small bell above the door singing its soft song as if it now recognized him not as a customer, but as something closer to family. The first morning after they shared that rough sandwich, Marcus seemed unsure what to do when he saw Keanu coming again. He was sweeping flour from the counter when the door opened. His eyes flicked up, then down, as if he did not want to believe Keanu would really come back. "Morning," Keanu said. His voice was gentle, like a blanket laid over a cold floor. Marcus gave a stiff nod. "You don't have to do this, you." "No," he muttered. "You don't have to keep showing up." Keanu only smiled. "Maybe I want to." He bought a small loaf that morning. Nothing fancy, just warm, soft, enough to remind him that sometimes life's best things are simple. He didn't rush out the door either. He sat by the window with his bread and a cup of tea Mrs. Hill brought him for free. While he sat, he watched Marcus work, wiping trays, packing pastries into paper bags for people who would eat them in their cars or at their desks. He watched how Marcus's hands moved when he thought no one was watching. Strong hands, tired hands, hands that deserved better. After a while, Keanu stood up and stepped behind the counter. Marcus jumped like he'd seen a ghost. "Ho, you can't be. Back here, man, health code." Keanu laughed, a soft, honest laugh that made Mrs. Hill chuckle too from where she stood kneading dough. "Relax. I'm not touching the bread. I'm just asking, what do you really want, Marcus?" Marcus frowned. He looked away, then at the floor. "I already told you. A place for my mom. Enough money to not feel scared every time the rent is due. That's survival," Keanu said gently. "What about after that? What do you want to build when you're not afraid anymore?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he wiped his hands on his apron, then leaned against the counter, his eyes drifting to the window where the city moved like it always did, fast and cold. "My mom used to run a small diner," Marcus said at last. "Before she got sick, it wasn't fancy, just 3 tables, some stools. But people came because she knew everyone's name. She remembered what you liked, how much sugar you took in your coffee. I used to help her after school. I'd wash dishes, wipe tables. It was the only time life felt good." Keanu nodded, listening, letting each word settle between them like warm bricks laid for a new foundation. "And you'd want that again?" Marcus gave a tiny, almost embarrassed shrug. "Yeah, but that's stupid. Nobody wants diners anymore. People want fast, cheap, packaged." Keanu's eyes lit up with something fierce and kind all at once. People wanted to feel seen. That never goes out of style. Marcus scoffed, but there was a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. "You really think you can fix this, huh? What are you gonna do, buy me a diner?" Keanu shook his head. "No, I'm gonna stand next to you while you build one. But first, we fix your roof. We fix the fear." That afternoon, when Marcus's shift ended, Keanu walked with him. They caught the bus across town, past the tall buildings that scraped the sky, past blocks where people never looked each other in the eye. When they got off, Marcus's steps slowed. He looked at the cracked pavement, the peeling paint on the old apartment building where his mother lived. Inside, the air smelled like old carpet and leaking pipes. His mother, Miss Paula, sat in a faded armchair, wrapped into blankets even though it wasn't that cold. She smiled when she saw her son, but paused when she saw Keanu behind him. "Mom, this is Keanu," Marcus said, his voice softer than Keanu had ever heard it. He's helping me." Miss Paula's eyes were sharp even though her body looked so tired. "Helping you how?" she asked, her voice thin but not weak. Keanu stepped forward, his hands tucked in his pockets, so she wouldn't see how nervous he felt. "Just standing with him. Maybe we can find a way to keep this roof over you." She laughed, a dry, surprised sound that cracked the air. "Boy, you can't save every stray you find." Keanu smiled, bowing his head a little. "Maybe not, but sometimes strays save me too." Marcus sat on the arm of her chair, his hand resting on her shoulder. She leaned her cheek against his arm like it was the softest pillow in the world. "We got an eviction notice," she said quietly. "I thought I could hide it from him for a bit longer, but boys grow up too fast." Keanu squatted down in front of her so he could look her in the eyes without looking down. "If you could stay here, would you want to?" She gave him a look so sharp it could cut bread without a knife. "This is our home. I raised Marcus here. We lost the diner. We lost my husband. I don't want to lose these walls too. Keanu nodded, heart heavy. Okay, then we fight for these walls. The next week was a storm of small moments that looked ordinary from the outside, but carried the weight of hope inside them. Keanu used every contact he had, not to pull strings in shady ways, but to find out what could be done legally. He found a local community lawyer who agreed to help Miss Paula, challenged the unfair rent hikes. He talked to neighbors who had been too scared to complain about the building's leaks and roaches. Meanwhile, Marcus kept showing up to work, but the sharp edge in his voice began to soften. Customers noticed. Old Mr. Geller, the retired teacher, teased him one morning. Look at you, smiling while you sell me my bread. Must be a holiday. Marcus just laughed, a real laugh this time, not the bitter one he'd used on Keanu that first day. One evening, as the bakery closed, Keanu stayed behind. He and Marcus sat on milk crates in the back, the warm smell of leftover bread filling the empty space. So, you're really gonna keep doing this? Marcus asked, looking at him sideways. Doing what? Keanu asked. Showing up. Helping. Listening. Keanu shrugged. You showed up too. You let me in. That's bigger than anything I've done. Marcus frowned at the floor, then looked up, eyes soft. Why, though? You could be anywhere in the world. Keanu smiled. Sometimes being somewhere small is the biggest thing you can do. Besides, I like this bakery, and I like you. Marcus rolled his eyes, but he couldn't hide the grin that tugged at his mouth. You're weird, man. Keanu laughed. I get that a lot. Outside, the night grew dark but felt warmer somehow. The bell above the bakery door stayed silent, but its soft jingle lived in Keanu's mind. A promise that some places never close if you're willing to keep them open with kindness. And somewhere inside him, Keanu knew this was just the beginning. A piece of bread, a roof saved, and a promise that respect grows when you stand next to someone instead of above them. Asterisk when pride stands in the way and kindness breaks through, days grew shorter. The mornings colder. Inside the small bakery on Maple Street, the warm smell of bread and fresh coffee made the world feel safer than it really was. But behind the glass counter, Marcus still carried storms in his chest. Sometimes he was the calm sea, passing out, bread with a gentle smile, but other times the wind inside him rose up, sharp and loud, ready to push away the very people who reached for him. Keanu saw it in Marcus's eyes every morning. The pride, the fear, the old habit of pulling back. When someone came too close, one morning, after the morning rush died down, they sat together at the corner table, 2 mugs of tea steaming between them. You look tired today, Keanu said softly, breaking off a piece of bread. Marcus rubbed his hands over his face. Mom woke up last night crying about the notice, even with the lawyer helping. She's scared. I'm scared. I keep thinking, what if this all falls apart? What if you just go back to your world and I'm stuck here, same as before? Keanu let the words hang in the air. He didn't try to answer too quickly. He had learned that sometimes the worst thing you could do to someone's pain was to cover it with empty promises. You think I'll run, Keanu said finally, because you've seen people run before. Marcus laughed, but it sounded like a broken thing. People love to promise they'll stay, until they don't. Keanu leaned forward, elbows on the table. I can't promise you I'll never fail you. I'm human. I mess up, I fall. But I can promise you this, I'll stand back up. I'll keep showing up. Not because I'm some saint, because I know what it feels like when no one shows up for you. Marcus's jaw tightened. Why me? Though, there's 1,000 people out there who need help. Why are you wasting your time on some nobody in a bakery? Keanu's eyes softened. You're not a nobody, you're Marcus. You're the man who takes care of his mom when he could have run. You're the man who holds so much pain but still shows up every morning to do honest work. That's not nothing. Marcus looked down, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. It's hard, man, to let someone help. It makes me feel weak. Keanu reached out, resting his hand lightly on Marcus's wrist. Letting someone stand beside you doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Just then, the bell above the bakery door rang out, sharp, sudden. A woman walked in, bundled up in a coat 2 sizes too big. Her eyes were wide, her lips chapped. From the cold, she carried a small girl on her hip, the child's nose red from the wind. Marcus stood quickly, pulling his wrist back as if ashamed of the moment he'd just shared. "Good morning," he said, his voice switching to polite but guarded. "What can I get for you?" The woman hesitated. She looked at the shelves, then at her daughter. I don't have enough for much, maybe just a roll." Keanu watched Marcus's shoulders stiffen. He could see the battle inside him, the part of Marcus that remembered being hungry like that, and the other part that hated to feel exposed to someone else's need. Before Marcus could say a word, Keanu stood and walked around the counter. "What's your name?" he asked the little girl. The child hid her face in her mother's shoulder, but peeked out with big eyes. "Leela." The mother answered. "Her name's Leela." Keanu knelt down to the child's level. "Hi, Leela. Do you like bread?" The girl nodded shyly. Keanu looked at Marcus over his shoulder. "Marcus, let's pack up something warm for them. Rolls, a loaf, maybe a couple sweet buns." Marcus hesitated, arms crossed. "We can't just—" Keanu held his gaze. "We can." The mother's eyes welled up. "I can pay a little," she said quickly. "I don't want—" Keanu shook his head. "You pay when you can, and when you can't, you take. That's how this works." Marcus let out a rough breath. He turned, grabbed a bag, and began filling it with soft rolls and buns, his movements quick but not angry. He handed the bag to the woman, eyes on the floor. "Next time you come in, don't wait to ask. Just tell me what you need." The woman held the bag to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you. Thank you both." As she left, Keanu watched Marcus. There was something like relief in the younger man's eyes, and something like shame, too. "I wanted to say no," Marcus whispered when the door closed behind the woman. "Part of me still does, because it feels like I'm giving away something I barely have myself." Keanu nodded. "And you did it anyway. That's what makes you strong." Marcus dropped back into his chair, his head in his hands. "It's hard to live like this, man, always choosing to be soft when the world wants you hard." Keanu rested a hand on Marcus's back. "That's why we don't do it alone." In the days that followed, the word spread about the man in the bakery who never turned people away, about the actor who sat behind the counter, packing bread with his own hands, never asking for cameras or thanks. People who could pay gave more. People who couldn't pay left with full hands and hope that tasted like fresh bread. But not everyone was happy. One evening, as they closed up, Mrs. Hill pulled Marcus and Keanu aside. Her old hands trembled as she wiped her apron. "The landlord came by," she said, her voice low. "He doesn't like what we're doing. Says if we keep giving away bread, we're ruining the business. Says he'll raise the rent. Says we're trouble." Marcus clenched his jaw. "I knew it. I knew it was too good to last." Keanu stepped closer, his voice calm. "What if it's not about lasting? What if it's about planting seeds that grow somewhere else if this place closes?" Marcus shook his head. "You don't get it. This is all I have. This job. This roof. I can't lose it too." Keanu put both hands on Marcus's shoulders. "Then we fight for it. Together. We find a way to keep this door open. And if they shut it, we open another." Marcus stared at him, eyes burning with old fear and new hope, both fighting for the same space inside him. "You really believe that?" Keanu nodded. "I do, because I believe in you." That night, as Marcus walked home, he found a folded piece of paper in his pocket, something Keanu had slipped there. Without saying a word, it was not money, it was a note, written in Keanu's small, careful handwriting. "You are not alone. You never were. I see you." Marcus stood on the cracked sidewalk outside his mother's building, the streetlight flickering overhead. He read the note once, twice, 3 times. Then he tucked it back in his pocket, the edges pressing warm against his heart. For the first time in years, the world did not feel like it was closing in on him. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. More trouble, maybe more threats. But he knew one thing for sure now. Kindness was harder than anger, softer. But it lasted longer. It grew roots, even in the coldest ground. And so did he. The storm they did not see coming. Morning after Marcus found Keanu's note in his pocket, he woke up before the sun. His mother, Miss Paula, was still asleep. her soft snores mixing with the quiet hum of the old heater in the corner. Marcus sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the cracks in the paint on the wall, thinking about the words in that note that you are not alone. You never were. I see you. No one had ever said those words to him before. Not like that. Not with a promise behind them. By the time the bakery opened, Marcus was already there, sweeping the front steps, brushing away the dust and broken leaves that had blown in overnight. The bell above the door sang its soft tune when Keanu walked in a little later than usual. Keanu looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes, the kind that spoke of long nights and heavier thoughts. But when he saw Marcus sweeping the steps, his tired eyes warmed with something stronger than any good night's sleep: trust. You're here early, Keanu said, holding up 2 cups of coffee he'd picked up down the street. I brought you this. Marcus took the coffee, fingers brushing Keanu's for just a second. Thanks, man. They stepped inside. The bakery smelled of fresh cinnamon rolls, the warmth pushing back the chill that still clung to their coats. Mrs. Hill was in the back, kneading dough, humming to herself. She didn't look up, but Marcus knew she was listening to every word they spoke. Any word from the landlord? Marcus asked, voice low. Keanu shook his head. Not yet. But I heard he's been telling people we're bad for business because we're giving too much away. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't bitter this time. Bad for business. We have more customers now than ever. People who come in just to buy extra bread for someone who can't afford it. Keanu sat on a stool behind the counter, warming his hands on the coffee cup. That's what scares him. Kindness spreads in ways greed can't control. Marcus leaned against the wall, sipping his coffee, eyes focused on the little bell above the door. Sometimes I wish I could go back to how I was before, he said suddenly, when I didn't care, when it was just me and my anger. It was simpler. Keanu tilted his head. Simpler doesn't mean better. Marcus sighed. No, but it hurts less. Keanu didn't argue. He knew what Marcus meant. How easy it was to build walls instead of bridges. He had built those walls himself once, when the world had felt too big and too cruel. But the walls always crumbled in the end, leaving you alone with nothing but your own echo. As the day moved on, the bakery filled with the soft hum of life. Old Mr. Geller with his sourdough, the young mother with little Leela, who now came in every other day, always leaving with a bag bigger than what she could pay for. People talked about the bakery like it was more than a place to buy bread. It was where they came to feel seen, even if just for a moment. But as kindness grew, so did the threat. One evening, after closing, Marcus stayed late to help Mrs. Hill scrub the kitchen floors. Keanu waited near the window, his hands tucked in his coat pockets. They heard the first sound, a soft tap on the glass, then another, and another. Marcus looked up, frowning. What the? Before he could finish, the front window shattered. A rock, then another, flew through the air, crashing onto the counter. Glass shards sprayed across the floor. Mrs. Hill screamed, dropping her rag. Marcus ran to the window. Outside, 2 shadows disappeared into the dark street, laughter echoing behind them like knives. They left behind a single word spray-painted across the bakery's front wall in angry red letters. Traitors. Keanu stepped forward, his heart pounding but his eyes calm. He laid a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Don't go after them. Not tonight. Marcus's chest heaved with rage. Why not? They can't get away with this. They can't. They will, Keanu said quietly. Because they're afraid. You stand up, they try to knock you down. You feed people. They call you weak. But you can't fight shadows with fists. Mrs. Hill knelt by the broken glass, tears slipping down her wrinkled cheeks. It's ruined, she whispered. This place, it's ruined. Keanu knelt beside her. It's just glass, he said. This place is bigger than windows and walls. It's people. And people don't break so easily. They spent the night cleaning up. Neighbors came by when they heard what had happened. Some brought plywood to cover the broken window. Others brought warm food, flasks of sweet tea, extra blankets for the draft. Marcus stood back, watching it all, the anger in him turning into something else. Something heavier but stronger. Later, when the bakery was dark and still, Marcus and Keanu sat on the floor near the boarded-up window. You should walk away, Marcus said suddenly. "Before this gets worse, before they come for you." Keanu shook his head. "I can't. Not when people need a place like this. Not when you're still fighting." Marcus's eyes burned. "Why do you care so much, you? Don't owe me anything." Keanu looked at him, his face calm but fierce. "I don't do this because I owe you. I do it because it's right. Because someone once stood up for me when I had nothing. Because I know what it feels like to be alone." Marcus didn't answer. He just leaned back against the wall, closing. His eyes, the word traitors, stared at him from outside, but he didn't flinch. "We're not traitors," Marcus said softly. "We're just trying to be good." Keanu smiled, exhaustion lining his face. "And that scares people more than anything." The next morning, the bakery opened like it always did, plywood covering the window. The word on the wall left there like a scar they wore with pride. People still came. More than ever. They dropped coins in the tip jar. They slipped envelopes of cash into Marcus's pocket when he wasn't looking. They left notes under the bread loaves. "Thank you for seeing me." Miss Paula visited too. She sat at the corner table, her blanket draped over her shoulders, watching her son with eyes that shone like warm glass. She reached for Keanu's hand when he brought her tea. "You gave me my son back," she said softly. Keanu smiled. "He did that himself." She squeezed his fingers, her grip stronger than he expected. "Don't let him forget who he is when the world tries to tell him otherwise." Keanu nodded. "I won't. But the world does not give up easily." That night, Keanu got a call. An anonymous number. A voice, low and cold. "Leave him alone. Go back to your movies. This isn't your fight." Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, the phone cold in his hand. "This is my fight," he said quietly. It always was. The line went dead. The threat, however, stayed. When he told Marcus about the call the next day, Marcus slammed his fist on the counter so hard the display case rattled. "They think they can scare you. They think they can scare me." Keanu reached for him. "They don't know you, Marcus. They don't know how strong you are." Marcus's eyes were wet, the anger mixing with fear and something bigger, determination. "We keep going, no matter what. We keep the door open." Keanu nodded. "Always." As the first snow fell that night, they stood together at the front of the bakery, staring at the word traitors still painted on the wall. They did not wipe it off. They left it there for everyone to see. Because sometimes the worst thing people call you becomes your greatest proof that you stood for something good. Inside, warm bread waited for anyone who needed it. Outside, the storm whispered that kindness would always be harder than hate. But Marcus and Keanu stood together now. And together, they would not break. The day the door stayed open, the snow fell thick and soft that morning, covering Maple Street in a blanket of quiet white. Inside the small bakery, the warmth was a shield against the cold world. Outside, the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon drifted through the air like a promise that no storm could close this door for good. Marcus came in early that day. He had barely slept. The phone threats, the broken window, the word traitors on the wall, they had dug deep into his bones. But so had something else, something stronger, something he had never felt so real before. He looked around the bakery, taking in every crack in the tile floor, every old wooden shelf, every tiny detail he used to hate when he thought he'd never belong here. Now, it all felt like his, not because he owned it, but because he cared for it, because it cared for him back. Keanu was already there, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in flour. He was trying to knead dough but not doing it very well. When he saw Marcus walk in, he laughed, that soft, honest laugh that had become more familiar than any applause on a movie set. "You're early," Keanu said, brushing flour off his nose. "Someone has to save the bread from you," Marcus shot back, a grin tugging at his lips. He reached for the dough, showing Keanu how to press it, fold it, make it breathe under his palms. Mrs. Hill came in from the back, carrying a tray of fresh buns. She pretended not to watch them, but every now and then she smiled at the sight of these two men, one who had once come here just to buy bread, the other who had once wanted to push everyone away. The doorbell jingled as the first customers came in. Old Mr. Geller shuffled in, leaning on his cane. He winked at Marcus. "Heard you're famous now, boy. Trader of the Year." Marcus laughed. Yeah, want your usual. Make it two. Mister, Geller said. One for my neighbor. He's sick, can't get out. On the house, Marcus said. Dotmer. Geller shook his head. Don't you dare. I pay double for this place to stay alive. As the day went on, more people came, some for bread, some just to stand by the warmth for a while, to remind themselves that not every door closes when life gets hard. A young mother slipped an envelope under the tip jar when Marcus wasn't looking. Inside was $5 and a note that read, "This place saved me when I couldn't feed my kids. Thank you." Outside, the word traders still glared at everyone passing by. Some people pointed at it. Some laughed, but more people nodded, as if they understood, as if they knew what it meant to be called something ugly for doing something right. After the lunch rush, Marcus and Keanu sat at the small table in the corner, the same table where it had all started. One piece of bread, one bitter truth, one promise to never look away. I talked to the landlord, Marcus said quietly. Keanu raised his eyebrows. And he wants us out, Marcus said. His voice did not shake this time. Says we're turning the place into a shelter. Says it's bad for his image. Keanu looked at him for a long moment, searching for fear, but he didn't find it. What do you want to do? Marcus leaned back, folding his arms. I want to stay. But if we can't, I want to take this with us. The open door, the warm bread, the people who feel safe here. Keanu's face broke into a slow, proud smile. Then we will. How? Marcus asked, the old doubt trying to crawl back in. The same way we fixed your roof, Keanu said. One brick at a time, one person at a time. We don't ask permission to care. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. You're serious, always. Keanu said, some people spend their whole lives building walls to keep others out. We'll spend ours building tables where they can sit. That night, they held a meeting right there in the bakery. Neighbors packed into the small space. Teachers, cab drivers, single mothers, old men with tired bones, teenagers with wild dreams. Miss Paula sat in her wheelchair near the counter, wrapped in her blanket like a queen on her throne. Marcus stood next to Keanu, not behind him, not in his shadow, next to him. He looked around the crowded room, his heart beating like a drum. They want us to shut this down, Marcus said, voice clear. But they can't shut us down if we don't let them. Someone in the back, the mother with little Leela, raised her hand. But what if they take the building? Keanu stepped forward. Then we open another door, and another. The connection is not in the bricks, it's in us, old mister. Geller pounded his cane on the floor. We're not going anywhere. The room burst into quiet cheers. Not loud, not wild, but steady, strong like roots under frozen ground, ready to bloom when spring comes. When the meeting ended, people stayed to sweep floors, wash cups, patch cracks in the walls. One by one, they pressed coins and folded bills into Marcus's hand. No big speeches, no charity, just neighbors taking care of each other. Later, when the last person left, Marcus and Keanu stood alone by the boarded-up window. They laughed at you, you know, Marcus said, his voice low. When you first walked in here, they laughed when you said you wanted to help. Keanu looked at him, the old pain gone from his eyes, replaced by something unbreakable. And now, Marcus smiled, a small, tired, beautiful smile. Now they know you meant it. Now they know you don't run. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. He pressed it into Marcus's hand. What's this? Marcus asked. A lease application, Keanu said. I found a spot across town. Bigger kitchen, cheaper rent, wheel. Need more hands, but people want to help. You ready? Marcus laughed, the deep, warm laugh that had been missing from him for too long. Yeah, I'm ready. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft but relentless. The word traders faded behind the frost. Inside, the smell of bread rose into the night, wrapping around the two men who refused to close the door on each other. When Keanu stepped out into the snow, Marcus stood at the window, watching him go. He didn't feel abandoned this time. He didn't feel like he was less than anyone else. He felt like he was standing exactly where he was meant to stand, in a small bakery on Maple Street, with his hands covered in flour and his heart open. Wide, the world would keep trying to close doors, but people like him, and people like Keanu, would keep opening them, again and again.